Hey guys, welcome back. So today's diary entries have a couple of really important things about Anne and a couple of things that I particularly connect with having been there. The first entry is going to talk about the I never say this right, Wester Orton clock. There was a church right next door, and the bells would chime. And it references in the book how the rest of the family was kind of unnerved by it, and Anne loved it. And I had an opportunity when I was there, waiting outside to go into. There was a line waiting to go into the Anne Frank house, and the bells chimed while I was standing out there. And so I took a video of it, and I think I have that in the slideshow. But it was just one of those cool moments of, oh my gosh, I'm standing somewhere that history really happened, that I'm listening to the same bells that Anne did. It was kind of just a cool moment. And then there's also a diary entry in here in which it's going to talk about the hiding place being covered up by the bookshelf. And I do have a picture of that for sure in the slideshow that you guys can see what that looks like. So, Saturday, July 11th, 1942. Dear Kitty, Daddy and Mommy and Margot can't get used to the sound of the Wester Orton clock yet, which tells us the time every quarter of an hour. I can. I loved it from the start, and especially in the night. It's like an old faithful friend. I expect you will be interested to hear what it feels like to disappear. Well, all I can say is that I don't know yet myself. I don't think I shall ever feel really at home in this house, but that does not mean that I loathe it here. It is more like being on vacation in a very particular boarding house, rather a mad idea, perhaps, but that's how it strikes me. The secret annex is an ideal hiding place. Although it leans to one side and is damp, and you'll never feel comfortable in you'd never feel such a comfortable hiding place anywhere in Amsterdam. No, perhaps not even in the whole of Holland. Our little room looked very bare at first, with nothing on the walls, but thanks to Daddy, who had brought my film star collection and picture postcards on beforehand, with the aid of a paste pot and brush, I have transformed the walls into a gigantic picture. So she cut out a bunch of different pictures from her, like movie star magazines, and put them up on the walls. It makes it look much more cheerful, and when the Van Dans come, we'll get some wood from the attic and make a few little cupboards for the walls and other odds and ends to make it look more lively. Margot and Mommy are a bit better now. Mommy felt well enough to cook some soup for the first time yesterday, but then forgot about it, and while she was downstairs talking, so the peas got burned to a cinder and utterly refused to leave the pot. Mr. Coppice had brought me a book called Young People's Annual. The four of us went to the private office yesterday evening and turned on the radio. It was so terribly frightening that someone might hear it that I simply begged Daddy to come down upstairs with me. Mommy understood how I felt and came too. We are very nervous in other ways too, that the neighbors might hear us and see something going on. We made curtains straight away on the first day. Really, one can hardly call them curtains. They are just light, loose strips of material, all different shapes, quality, and patterns, which Daddy and I sewed together in a most unprofessional way. These works of art are fixed in position with drawing pins, not to come down until we emerge from here, because if people were to see light in the windows, they would know someone was there, and then they would investigate and find them. So they had to use blackout curtains so that they weren't able to be found. And you'll find that other people use blackout curtains in the war as well. Like in England, for instance, used blackout curtains so that the Nazis couldn't find their location at night to be able to drop bombs from the sky. So blackout curtains were used in a lot of different ways during the war. Now I have to find my spot again. Sorry. There are some large business premises on the right of us, and on the left, a furniture workshop. There is no one there after working hours, but even so, sounds can travel through the walls. We have forbidden Margot to cough at night, although she has a bad cold, and make her swallow large doses of codeine. I am looking for Tuesday, when the Van Dans arrive. It will be much more fun and not so quiet. It is the silence that frightens me so in the evenings and at night. I wish, like anything, that one of our protectors could sleep here at night. I can't tell you how oppressive it is to never be able to go out of doors. Also, I'm very afraid that we shall be discovered and be shot. This is not exactly a pleasant prospect. We have to whisper and tread lightly during the day. Otherwise, the people in the warehouse might hear us. Someone is calling me. Yours, Anne. Friday, August 14th, 1942. I have deserted you for a whole month, but honestly, there's so little news here that I can't find amusing things to tell you. The Van Dans arrived on July 13th. We thought they were coming on the 14th, but between the 13th and the 16th of July, the Germans called up people right and left, which created more and more unrest, so they played it for safety. Better a day too early than a day too late. At 9:30 in the morning, we were still having breakfast. Peter arrived, the Van Dans son, not 16 yet, a rather soft, shy, gawky youth. Can't expect too much from his company. He brought his cat, Mooshie, with him. Mr. and Mrs. Van Daan arrived half an hour later, and to our great amusement, she had a large potty in her hat box. I don't feel at home anywhere without my chamber, which is another chamber pot, is what she's referring to. If you can imagine, they were porcelain pots that people would go to the bathroom in. So she carried hers with her in a hat box. So it's the first thing to find its permanent resting place under her divan. Mr. Van Daan did not bring his, but carried a folding tea table under his arm. From the day they arrived, we all had meals cozily together, and after 3 days, it was just as if we were one large family. Naturally, the Van Dans were able to tell us a lot about the extra week that they had spent in the inhabited world. Among other things, we were very interested to hear what had happened to our house and to Mr. Gottsmith. Mr. Van Daan told us. Mr. Gottsmith phoned at 9 o'clock on Monday morning and asked if I could come around. I went immediately and found G in a state of great agitation. He let me read the letter that the Franks had left behind and wanted to take the cat to the neighbors as indicated in the letter, which pleased me. Mr. G was afraid that the house would be searched, so we went through all of the rooms, tidied up a bit, and cleared away the breakfast things. Suddenly I discovered a writing pad on Mrs. Frank's desk with the address in Maastricht written on it. Although I knew that this was done on purpose, I pretended to be very surprised and shocked and urged Mr. G to tear this unfortunate little piece of paper up without delay. I went on pretending that I knew nothing of your disappearance all the time, but after seeing the paper, I got a brainwave. Mr. Gottsmith, I said, it suddenly dawns on me what this address might refer to. Now it all comes back to me. A high-ranking officer in the office about 6 months ago, he appeared to be very friendly with Mr. Frank and offered to help him, should the need arise. I think he must have kept his word and somehow or other got them into Belgium and then on to Switzerland. I should tell this to any friends who may inquire. Don't, of course, mention Maastricht. With these words, I left the house. Most of your friends know already, because I've told them myself several times, because I've told myself several times by different people. We were highly amused at the story, and when Mr. Van Daan gave us further details, we laughed still a bit more at the way people can let their imagination run away with itself. One family had seen a pair of us on bicycles very early in the morning, and another lady knew quite definitely that we were fetched by a military car in the middle of the night. Yours, Anne. Friday, August 21st, 1942. Dear Kitty, the entrance to our hiding place has now been properly sealed. Mr. Crawler thought it would be better to put a cupboard in front of our door, because a lot of houses are being searched for hidden bicycles. But of course it had to be a movable cupboard that can open like a door. Mr. Vossen made the whole thing. We had already let him in on the secret, and he can't do enough to help. If we want to go downstairs, we have to first bend down, then jump, because the step is gone. The first 3 days, we were all going about with massive lumps on our foreheads because we had all knocked ourselves against the low-hanging doorway because they forgot that they had to duck their heads when they jumped. Now we have nailed a cloth filled with wood wool against the top of the door. Let's see if this helps. I'm not working much at present. I'm giving myself holidays until September. Then Daddy is going to give me lessons. It's shocking how much I've forgotten already. There is a little change in our life here. Mr. Van Daan and I usually manage to upset each other. It's just the opposite with Margot, whom he likes very much. Mommy sometimes treats me like a baby, which I can't bear. Otherwise, things are going better. I still don't like Peter anymore. He's boring. He flops lazily on his bed half the time, does a bit of carpentry, then goes back for another snooze. What a fool. It is lovely weather, and in spite of everything, we make the most of what we can by lying on a camp bed in the attic where the sun shines through an open window. Yours, Anne. So take a couple moments, go back to your journal that you're keeping, whether it's digital or on paper, and write down some of your thoughts. See you tomorrow.